Dr. Hayes, are you with us?
I am, Dr. Pecora.
Great. Let's get started. Good afternoon or morning, depending on where you are, and hope everyone is having a great week and keeping cool. I'm Dr. John Pecora from Meyer DC, Meyer PT, and Elevate, and we're thrilled today to welcome one of the smartest guys we know, especially as it relates to nutrition and science, Dr. Don Hayes, to speak about why it's important to truly understand inflammation and how to address inflammation with your patients. Just a reminder to please keep your computer audio on mute. And if you have any questions, you can use the chat feature at the bottom right of your screen, and we'll have Dr. Hayes address those questions after his talk. Also, please stick around for a special offer at the end of today's talk from today's sponsor, Greens First. Dr. Hayes, would you like to take it from here?
I would, Dr. Pecora. Thank you so much for the introduction. Hi, colleagues, and welcome. As you see on the first screen, this is the Inflame Chronic Inflammation Support Protocol, and subtitled How the Nobel Prize in Medicine's Research Can Help Health and Fitness Professionals Test and Treat for Chronic Inflammation. Now, you know, most of you maybe don't know me. I am a chiropractor. I have been for quite a while. I operated my own clinic, so I've been in the trenches. And it's been one of those things where I've had a chance for a lot of years to really understand and use and treat pain and inflammation. I also have had an opportunity to partner with, for 7 years, with the owner and founder of the largest nutrition company at that time, allowing me to teach over 1,000 different healthcare professionals a 4-day nutritional boot camp. It's where I really got ingrained and excited about nutrition in general. I knew that company after a while was going to sell, so I moved on and formulated my own Greens First line of nutritional products with my current partners. I've written a number of books. I co-authored one with one of my mentors, Michael Gerber, a New York Times author, called The E-Myth Nutritionist, and it brings me right now full circle to Inflame, the Chronic Inflammation Support Protocol. Now, this thing that you see on the screen, this 4-letter word, pain, this is the single biggest reason I think that people seek out health and fitness professionals' care. I mean, I had some pushback years ago when chiropractors said we don't deal with pain, but hey, let's face it, this is what they know, meaning the patients, and this is what they're after. Some relief for that. Now, this webinar has been broken into 2 parts. Part 1, right now, I'm laying down the scientific groundwork for pain and inflammation, and Part 2 will be coming up. It'll be scheduled and come up, but it is really going to be on Inflame. I'm sorry about that, flipped it back. The Inflame Cell Inflammation Blood Test. And it's all going to be about how to use this very simple at-home, it's a finger stick blood test. I mean, it's rock solid in the science to help improve the outcomes for your clients and patients. That test itself has more than 200 studies done on it. There's over 100 peer-reviewed journals. I mean, collaboration with some of the major players in the world of healthcare. As you see at the top there, JAMA, Stanford, Harvard University, PLOS. And every test that you choose to use with your clients or patients will be using the same laboratory that all the research was done on. It's the largest and only that I know of CLIA certified lab based on fatty acid testing, so it's very high standards. Okay, so let's switch over to the science on this whole issue. You see on the screen, we're going to talk and touch on 2 different epidemics that are affecting all of us in practice today. The first one is obesity. I mean, needless to say, it's a major epidemic. It's estimated that, 2/3 of our patients are either overweight or obese. I mean, we're talking basically 7 out of 10 that come through the front door, and you don't need many diagnostic tests to look at someone and know that they're overweight. But obesity is a big problem. So as you see this picture on the screen of this gentleman, which pretty much on the picture, he's obese, not overweight. The question I often ask when I do a live presentation and show this picture is, hey, what do you think came first on this individual? Did this person become overweight, and then because he's overweight and obese, the toxins and all the chemicals created the inflammation, and then that led to all these little things you see around him, all these diseases and things? Or could he have been a lean, mean fighting machine? Could he have been just very, very lean, normal weight, became inflamed, and then because of the inflammation, he became overweight? And you know, when I ask the question, show the picture, and ask for a show of hands, I get about a mixture of 50-50. So you know where you are. But hey, Harvard University did a study on this, and they published a study, and guess what the results showed? Yeah, Harvard says that inflammation comes first. It precedes obesity. Now, think about that for a second. That would mean this guy was a lean, mean fighting machine. He was lean. He was normal weight. He became inflamed. And from that inflammation, these conditions started to come up. He started to put on weight. He became obese. Wow. In fact, Eric Rim, who did the study and the research and published it, he said in the middle there, he said, hey, we don't have an obesity epidemic in our country. What we have is an inflammation epidemic. So please keep that in mind as we talk about how we can deal with chronic inflammation. We know already now just from RIM's work here at Harvard that 7 out of 10 of your patients that come through the door without even testing them, just by looking at them, you know that according to this, they have some level of inflammation, and it's there before, and it's going to contribute and lead to, according to this research, a serious situation. Now, another piece of research that I really like to point to is this one. It's entitled Body Mass Index and Musculoskeletal Pain. Is there a connection? Now, I like this a lot. This is by David Seaman. He's a chiropractor, a scientist. He teaches at one of the schools. And this was published in the Chiropractic Manual Therapeutics in 2013. What the title says it all, really. In other words, does the weight on a patient or a client, does it have something to do with their musculoskeletal pain? Could it possibly have something to do with it? Well, 153 references in this article say absolutely it does, yes. And guess what? And just in case you need a little overview on BMI, if that patient or your client is anywhere over 25.0, they're already overweight or obese, depending on where they are. And we know RIM's already saying that comes before the thing, and as soon as they're at that level, they have inflammation. Wow. So we need to be thinking about what we can do for this patient immediately. Now, one of the conclusions drawn by Seaman at the end of this article was this. He said, look at his choice of words. It's incumbent, not just a good idea for us to do this. He feels it's incumbent on professionals to do what? To conduct additional testing. See that? Now, as you know more about the inflamed test and how it unfolds and what it can uncover for you, because you just can't look. You're going to see the 4 categories all patients fall into, and you just can't look at somebody and know if they're inflamed. But he says it's incumbent on professionals for sure in this case to conduct additional testing on all patients that have abnormal BMIs, 25 or over, to uncover what? Chronic inflammatory chemistry. Keep in mind those 3 words, chronic. I'll show you where they came from. Chronic inflammatory chemistry that could lead to a chronic disease. You see, what Seaman says is a problem, especially for me as a chiropractor, if they come into me and I do all my normal stuff, my adjusting, my structural work, maybe I have some modalities, maybe I throw some nutrition at them and help them. But I did not do this additional testing that would uncover the possibility of chronic inflammatory chemistry. They may get out of my office without me helping to advise them, and they may later become a casualty of a chronic disease. Now, the second major epidemic causing a lot of pain is the autoimmune disease. NIH says there's now more than 100 of these. And guess what? The most common component is that of pain. So here's how this test works. This test will help uncover 2 very important blood chemistry problems. Number 1, you're going to find out, does that patient, does that client suffer from chronic inflammatory chemistry? It's that simple. Do they suffer from that? And number 2, it's a separate test, but it's all part of the same test. What is their level of cellular fatty acid imbalance? Now, the whole idea about the origin of pain and using pain, it came from the National Institutes of Health. In 2007, they actually published this article in Medical Hypotheses in 2007. They hypothesized that all pain, has now been proven, comes from one source. They called it the unifying law of pain. And they said it has one cause. It's irrespective of if it's acute pain or chronic, if it's peripheral or deep central, if it's nociceptive body pain, neuropathic, the nerve pain, They don't care if it's sharp, dull, aching, burning, stabbing, numbing, or tingling. They suggest, and they found out in the article, that all pain has one origin, and that's inflammation. So think about this, colleagues. We're all together on this. So patients come in to us because they're in pain. That's just the end result of an abnormal, health situation. We now know that it's also a clear indication that they have inflammation. So anything that you and I can do to help support and reduce inflammation, thus the chronic inflammation support protocol, a way to measure and monitor and correct that, we obviously can help the patient. So here's where this information came from. In 1982, the Nobel Prize in Medicine was awarded to these three gentlemen here for discovering prostaglandins. Prostaglandins are local hormones in the body. They're also called eicosanoids. It's termed good and bad. But what's interesting, prior to 1982, nobody in the scientific world knew what caused chronic inflammation. I graduated before 82. Maybe some of you listening did as well. Now, they taught me about acute and chronic inflammation. But now they're linking back, they kind of lumped it all together. It wasn't their fault. It wasn't even discovered. I didn't get any specific chronic inflammatory treatment protocol. We kind of just did it together. And so I knew chronic inflammation was bad, and it probably led to chronic disease. But boy, in 82 made the difference. It was a pivotal year. Because look, what they discovered was simply, as you read in the center there, they found out that a release of an unsaturated fatty acid called arachidonic acid, that release from the cell membranes into the bloodstream causes chronic inflammatory chemistry. Now, I said it's a hormone. It's a localized hormone, arachidonic acid. But here's the thing to keep in mind, that unlike, say, thyroid hormone that comes from a gland, there is no gland that produces arachidonic acid. There is, because they say it's in the cell membrane, and there's 100 trillion cells in our body, so it's like having 100 trillion glands. Now, as long as arachidonic acid is stored in the membrane, that's where the body puts it, and it doesn't get released, no chronic inflammatory chemistry. However, look what it goes on to say. How is it released from the cell membranes? It's released due to trauma. Oh, that makes sense. If you sprain your neck, whiplash, or lifts a load, tears tissue, it tears the cell membrane, it's released into the bloodstream. Number two, look what it says there. Stress. Are you kidding me? If there's stress around the cell membrane, if the cell membrane gets stressed, it will also release arachidonic acid, and of course, they have on there is also a disease process. And what does it do when it gets released? It creates chronic inflammatory chemistry in the bloodstream that leads to a cellular fatty acid imbalance that will lead to the chronic inflammation and chronic disease. Now, a lot of companies and organizations jumped on this research. The pharmaceutical industry, for instance, went crazy on this thing. They started manufacturing brand new anti-inflammatory NSAIDs to block these hormones. They came out with the COX-2 inhibitors. If you Google this, you'll find out that there were not COX-2 inhibitors prior to 82. The research helped trigger that. They came with their feelings that if they blocked these hormones, they could stop the pain. And it did, I guess, work that way, but unfortunately things like Vioxx was made, and some of these anti-inflammatories blocked, both good and bad, leading to, cardiac arrest and death, and so they took some of these products off the market. So Spine, which is considered the leading journal in spinal care, as a chiropractor, this is the Bible, and I'm sure for many of you listening, the same thing, you know who Spine is. It's a very prestigious journal. Well, Spine published an article, I think it was 10, 12 years after the Nobel Prize, entitled Role of Inflammation in Lumbar Pain. Now think of what they're saying here. They had an article here that what is the role, colleague, of inflammation in a patient that has lumbar pain. So they have lumbar pain, and really they're talking all musculoskeletal pain. It didn't matter how to be lumbar. It was the number one biggest area of complaint. But what is the role of inflammation in lumbar pain? And what Spine came up with is that they concluded that all musculoskeletal pain is caused by one of three things. Number one, inflammation alone. Now, this rocked a lot of the chiropractic world because, you know, we're kind of under the impression that all low back pain or musculoskeletal pain is injury-induced, trauma-induced. I mean, a lot of it is, but whoa, you're telling me that inflammation by itself without any type of trauma whatsoever could cause and mimic exactly the same characteristics that I see with an injury. Yeah, that's what they're saying. And that shouldn't be surprising because the Nobel Prize said trauma and then it said stress. So stress to the cell membranes can release it. Number two, they said inflammation and a mechanical factor. Okay, I feel more comfortable with that. Okay, there's a mechanical issue and inflammation together, but guess what rocked the world again for me? Never a mechanical factor alone. So lumbar pain, inflammation and lumbar pain cannot occur from mechanical alone. So what they're really saying, all musculoskeletal pain, it has a chronic inflammatory chemistry component that needs to be treated along with the mechanical factor. And that's what we're offering with the chronic inflammation support protocol. Now, with these blood test results, there's two things you're going to get to be able to evaluate the patient. Number one, finding out if they have chronic inflammatory chemistry. It's not just a visual now and looking at them, but you're going to find out. And there's ranges on this lab test that you're going to get back. I mean, they go from, you know, severe inflammation to optimal, down to zero. You're going to find that a lot of people don't even measure at all. But what we're looking for is somewhere between 8 and 12%. 8 works in the cell membrane of the EPA-DHA, and optimal is 12. But hey, the minute you drop below 8%, when you have it below 8%, and the further down you go, done. They have chronic inflammatory chemistry that's present. Test number two is the cellular fatty acid imbalance. This is a ratio. This is what's really causing the issue. It's going to measure what they've been consuming the last 3 to 4 months. They all swear they're eating this way or that way, and you're going to have it now. You've got the science that's going to show what they're doing. And that ratio is critical. I mean, it runs from, you know, again, optimal to severe. Optimal would be 1 to 1, omega-6, omega-3. Severe is bad, 25 as much as 50 to 1. So when you see that's on there, we see what sufficient is. We'd like optimal 1 to 1. It can go as low as 3 to 1. You're going to be shocked and to find out that many patients are going to be, you know, well over 4 to 1, maybe as much as 25 or more to 1. So how serious really is this? I mean, is this just an inconvenience? They're inflamed a bit and it's not really life-threatening? Well, PLOS did a study, the preventable cause of death in the United States, and they found out, this is a combination of Harvard in conjunction with the CDC, that 95% of Americans are deficient in one nutrient. We're going to talk about that nutrient. And that one nutrient deficiency leads to both chronic inflammatory chemistry and cellular fatty acid imbalance. Now, the deficiency of this nutrient is responsible. Now, get this. This is the study for the 6th leading cause of preventable death in the U.S. It causes 96,000 deaths a year. That's not a little thing. That's a major thing. And according to the Weston A. Price Foundation, 20% of Americans have blood levels so low, you can't even detect it on this test. Yet guess what? When a survey was done on people asking about this nutrient, 3 out of 4, 77%, they don't even think having a low level is harmful. Colleagues, we got some education we need to do here. If it's killing 96,000 people a year and 3 out of 4 don't even know it's harmful, I've run into colleagues that didn't even know it's harmful, but it is. And we're going to talk more about that nutrient. It's one of the 4 in the chronic inflammation support protocol. So let's take a look at graphically what this looks like. You see, this is where you and I have the responsibility, I feel, to share this with our patient. We look at things like Robbins pathology textbooks. They don't do that. This is part of our training. In Robbins pathology textbook, let me show you this graph. In the upper left-hand corner is a healthy tissue that got injured. When it gets injured, if you go straight over to the right, if the nutrients are available in the bloodstream, in the system, in the body, if these nutrients that are 95% deficient, but if they're available and the immune system then is functioning properly, and this is what they taught me in school, and I'm sure they taught you, acute inflammation will heal within 48 hours to 4 to 6 weeks. It will heal itself. And as you see over there to the right, complete resolution, normal function. However, if you go from the top down to the bottom and the nutrients are not there, of course the body heals. It has to heal somehow, even though it doesn't have what it needs to heal. And it heals, as you see down there, in a form of scar tissue, fibrosis. And you re-injure that tissue, now go to the far right on the bottom in the right-hand corner, and you got loss of function. Wow. Now, I'm going to suggest that they get on these nutrients the minute they come into your office, the minute you see a new one, and the minute you get off this call and you're ready to use this thing with your patients you currently have. Because when is it, from looking at Robinson's textbook here, when is it a good idea to get them on the nutrients necessary to heal properly? Obviously, before the top left-hand corner. Unfortunately, many patients will wait to the bottom right-hand corner, or maybe we didn't give them the nutrients or the advice to do so, and they got down there, and that's a very, very tough place to have them. So there's a visual of it. You see, with the chronic inflammation support protocol, it's going to include both the cell test, inflammation test, and the anti-inflammatory nutrient products. And what we're hoping to do with this is designed to help reduce chronic inflammatory chemistry, help balance the cellular fatty acids, and help modulate pain. And we're going to do it all without decreasing the normal immune system response, something that, pharmaceutical drugs are trying to figure out how to stop the bad eicosanoids and keep the good, and so far it doesn't. We're going to stay focused on this, on nutritionally how to do this right. So let's talk about some of these anti-inflammatory nutrients that are necessary for the patient to deal with this. Number one is polyphenols. What is a polyphenol? Most of you probably know, but if you don't, these are the chemicals found in plants. And they're in plants to protect plants. I mean, plants develop polyphenols to keep them healthy and alive from their predators. And science found out that when you and I eat them, they help us. They're extremely anti-inflammatory in the right numbers. They also help quench free radicals in the right numbers. So they're very, very important. You heard all the time that patients need to eat 7 to 9 servings. I mean, the number's going up all the time. In my opinion, you can't get enough polyphenols. 7 to 9, great idea. Average American, 1. Children, less than that. It isn't getting done. The darker the green, the brighter the color, the more polyphenols. So the biggest reason you need these in you, in my perspective for the chronic inflammation deal, is that they help to prevent oxidation of the essential fatty acids in your body. Yeah, you got to prevent oxidation outside in a bottle, but you got to prevent oxidation inside the body. Polyphenols will help prevent that if you have adequate amounts. Now you see the last bullet there in the white. You can get them in a couple different ways. You can eat your 7 to 9 servings of dark green, brightly colored fruits and vegetables each and every day, which no one does. Or you can take 1 scoop of Greens First Pro. It's a powder, 6 to 8 ounces of pure water. Last assay that I was able to look at said that it has the antioxidant protection in excess of 15 servings of fruits and vegetables. So it's a very, very powerful polyphenol. The second product is EPA-DHA. This is a fatty acid. This is found in our product Omega-3 First Pro. I mean, it's pretty clear that you got to have adequate levels of omega-3 fatty acids. They got to be very rich in EPA and DHA. These are the inhibitors of the inflammation. And don't let your patients get fooled by the big box stores that sell fish oils, or maybe you don't even realize that. You have to have a product that lists the amount of EPA, DHA on the label. It's the EPA, DHA that is critical. I mean, the only way you're going to increase these omega-3 deficiencies in these cell membranes, 100 trillion of them, is to eat more omega-3 fatty acids, the EPA, DHA specifically. Now, in that bottom paragraph there, too, you say patients can either eat 3 ounces of oily fish at least 4 times a week. I don't think that's enough. The reason I say that is that the longest living, least inflamed culture in our world is the Japanese population, and they eat fish 6 to 7 times a week. So you have to eat this fish, 3 to 4 ounces, 3, 4, 5, 6 times a week. Or you guess what? You can take 4 of these Greens First Pro omega-3 capsules, 2 times a day, and you're going to get your minimum. You need a minimum of 2.5 grams every day of EPA and DHA. Product 3 is GLA. That helps modulate bad eicosanoids, these bad guys. Now, by the way, the first two products we'll talk about are given immediately to the patient, in my opinion, with the blood test. The next two, when the results come back, then you determine on the results if you add these next two. So you don't have to use all four initially. The test is going to modulate. But the reason you use the first two is there is a baseline amount that they have to have anyway, even if their test is normal. So you get them on that product right away, as I showed you with the Robbins, pathology textbook. The sooner the better. This is a very important thing because a lot of confusion around this. Omega-6s cause inflammation. Not all omega-6s are bad. Yes, we want them off of their vegetable oils and processed and fatty, those kind of meals that are just not healthy. But certain omega-6s are beneficial. GLA being one of them, and GLA found in this product, the ahi flower oil, is incredible. So you can take 3 soft gels of this, and it'll add 102 milligrams of GLA. Again, it'll be determined based when we see the results. And last but not least is alkaline minerals. Alkaline minerals found in Acid Neutralizer Pro. Remember what the Nobel Prize research said. It said one of the reasons that you can have arachidonic acid leak out of the cell membrane into the blood, causing the chronic inflammatory chemistry, is stress. I mean, nothing is going to stress a cell membrane more than as it becomes acidic with cellular acidosis. I mean, you know as well as I do, blood has to stay at a pH of 7.35, 7.45, but the extracellular fluid should be very close to that. Certainly needs to be alkaline, over 7. As it goes down and then becomes more acidic, there's a problem. Now, how do they keep that fluid alkaline? Well, same thing. You got to eat alkaline type food, dark greens. I mean, we're talking heavy-duty things like kale and whatnot. No one's doing it, so the other alternative is you could take 1 scoop of Greens First Pro acid neutralizer, put that in 68 ounces of water. You're going to get these 8 crucial ionic alkaline minerals. They can help promote neutralization, elimination of the acids, and alkalize that pH. So again, it'll be determined when you finally get the results back from your test. So let me show you how easy this all goes together, because it is extremely easy for you to implement. All you need is 2 forms that we'll get to you, let's say in the next webinar. We'll make sure that you get them emailed to you. But it's the anti-inflammatory treatment category and nutrition dosage chart. Look, all patients are going to fall into one of 4 categories. Here's the chart. Here's the treatment 4-category treatment chart. Now, you see the 4 categories that are circled in red. So everybody falls in that. I mean, it's pretty easy. We're talking two categories. One is the patient is of normal weight and or the patients are overweight or obese. And then within that normal weight, they're either inflamed or not. And within that overweight or obese, they're either inflamed or not. So go to the top. At the very top, it's the ideal weight without inflammation. How do you even know? That's what our goal is. How do you know? You have to do the chemistry test. I mean, you can look at them and do a BMI, and you know that they're ideal weight, but you don't know if they're inflamed or not until you do the test. It's critical, but that's what we're shooting for. Why? Go down to category 3. Look at what that is. Ideal weight with inflammation. That's very unhealthy. You're kidding me. You know what this is? This is mostly the overtrained patient, in a lot of cases even the Olympic athlete. I mean, they found Jim Fix, the gold medal winner, long-distance runner, dead alongside the road with a heart attack, running 50 miles a week. Very inflamed, obviously ideal weight. So some of these are some of the sickest people in your practice. So you're going to have chemistry tests that's going to be able to show you if they're inflamed, if they're category 1 or 3. Above that is category 2, let's say overweight without inflammation. Now this is an accident waiting to happen. Yeah, the cells at this moment is holding all the arachidonic acid inside the membranes. They're clearly overweight, maybe even obese. They're lucky that the arachidonic acid has not fell into the bloodstream yet, causing this, acute and chronic inflammation. Very serious thing. You got to help them lose weight, but they got to be on the protocol to prevent, inflammation getting worse. And then at the bottom is the worst of all. We're talking overweight with inflammation. This is the most unhealthy possible. So you're going to be able to take and put all patients, I mean, as soon as you get off this webinar, you go back to your clients or patients, you can start thinking about this. I mean, what category is that person in? And if they're, the normal weight, you go, okay, they're normal weight, I can see that, but are they inflamed or not? I don't know. If they're overweight, we already know from Harvard they have inflammation, so you want to measure how much. And if they're hurting, you know that for sure on top of it. Okay, the second form then is really just a nutrition dosage chart. This tells you exactly how much of these products they need. It's real easy. The top half is the first test, which is the chronic inflammatory state, and the second one is the ratio. So it tells you specifically exactly what to do. So on that next webinar, we're going to cover, in this tutorial on Inflame, we're going to cover what you see on the screen right now. And what I'll touch on here is just simply this. That brochure you see in the middle, we're going to show you how to use that. It's an 8-panel brochure with science and references on it. That brochure, and your sticker, place your sticker on the back, that brochure almost in every case will get the patient to say, I want the test. It does the work for you. It's very important to have some kind of a piece of educational material in your office that will do the selling and explaining for you. Now, then, number two, that'll drive them to the test above. As you see, the test is a simple at-home blood test kit. It will determine both the chronic inflammatory chemistry and the fatty acid imbalance. Number three is that 3-page report you see at the bottom. You're going to get back by email a 3-page personalized treatment recommendation report on how the patient is doing. You're going to know these two categories, and you're going to know them, clearly, 100% certainty that they have chronic inflammation and then what the ratio is and what's causing that. That's very, very important for us. Then you're going to be able, with that data, be able to place them into one of the 4 treatment categories I showed you. Number 5, then that makes it easy for you then to be able to recommend the nutrition. You already have them on the first 2 to determine if they need more of one of those first 2 and or if they need the second 2. And last but not least, is monetizing this. I mean, that is up to you how you do it, but you can easily earn over $1,000 a case on each of the patients or clients you put on this between the testing and the nutrition. 95% of the people are deficient. You put a couple people on this a week, it could be, $100,000 a year or more. So, Dr. Pecora, I think we're at the end of this part 1. Do anyone have any questions that you could throw my way?
That's great, Dr. Hayes. Thanks so much for the information. Yeah, there were a few questions. One was a question with regards to any specific type of license that you need to sell the blood test kit.
Yeah, I get that question often. I mean, the test itself has regulatory status, and it has full approval from the FDA as a over-the-counter general health and wellness product. So, basically anyone can sell it over the counter. And really, since the test is packaged and sold as a at-home patient or client self-administered finger stick test, it's pretty obvious that no special license is required. And doing it this way usually is a lot less expensive for the patients.
And another question was, we're all super busy in practice with, with all of your patients. How long typically does it take to explain the blood test? And do you ever have, any patients that have anxiety about, the finger sticking or pricking to get the blood?
Yeah. Well, the Inflame test basically is packaged in a small plastic box. You see some of the pictures I had on the screen. It's about the size of a deck of cards. I mean, it contains all the different supplies that are absolutely needed to collect the blood. The spot goes onto the paper. There's a prepaid envelope to mail it back to the lab. So that part's pretty easy. Now, inside that box is an instructions for use brochure. I mean, it's got color pictures of all the contents. It has a step-by-step procedure of what to do. I mean, the test itself should really only take a couple minutes, and I mean, most people have no problem with it at all. Now, regarding that finger stick anxiety, I mean, really, most people have had at least one done somewhere in their lifetime. I mean, even children get it done, so it, too, typically is no big deal. There are things we can talk about in the next section that you can do to help anyone lower the chances of some mild discomfort. I mean, like, you can make sure you obviously don't use a finger that's already sore. They don't know this, but don't prick the top of the finger. Use the sides. There's less nerve endings and plenty of capillaries. So another good idea I recommend, Dr. Pecora, is for the doctor and or maybe a key staff member to actually take the test themselves. I mean, not only should they both know their numbers, but in that process they'll be able to see how simple and painless it really is. And again, we'll cover more of that later in part 2.
Great. And then I know you just touched on this briefly at the end of your slides, but can you just kind of break down a little bit of the profit on the program?
Oh, sure, I'd be glad to. You know, not very long ago, this actual test that we've been talking on, showing on the screen, the cost for the healthcare provider was $150. I mean, now that was still a reasonable price because, I mean, if you took a blood draw inside a medical office, that cost somewhere between $200 and $400. So that was still reasonable. But because of the leverage of combining forces between Greens First and Meyer, we were able to get the cost of this test and the lab result report down to only $40. I mean, it's incredibly reasonable now. And the amount that the practitioner charges is up to them, of course. I mean, one idea is to bundle a brief office visit to go over the results with that cost of the test and just charge one fee. Let's say you charge maybe $140 for both the test and the office visit. That would enable you to make $100 profit per test. Now, you can charge, you know, more or less, but you know darn good and well that patients are going to want to know their results. They're going to want to know what you found out, either directly from you or a staff person, however you do it in your practice, and they're going to know what the normal is and what they can do if they're outside that range. For the doctor's benefit listening, I mean, the science suggests that they need to retest patients about every 3 to 4 months. Why? That's about how long it takes for red blood cells to turn over. And since you're going to make some recommendations on changing diet and supplements, hey, you need to retest to see how it's doing, because it can literally turn around back to normal from abnormal in 90 days or less. Now, with that said, I mean, the average client's going to need 3 to 4 tests within a year. That'll generate $300 to $400 profit there. In regard to the anti-inflammatory nutrition that I think they're all going to need, you can estimate maybe somewhere between, I don't know, several $100s anyway a patient will be paying. So it's going to put it, as I said earlier, each case is going to be well over $1,000. I think what's important to keep in mind, I'm sure your listeners will agree, that really omega-3 deficiency being the 6th leading cause of death, I mean, it's responsible for 96,000 deaths a year. I mean, 95% of Americans are deficient. It really isn't about making money. It's about improving outcomes and possibly saving a life. So really, since most patients need it, I mean, if you're able to help just a couple people a week, I could generate well over $100,000 a year. And many of these patients are going to stay on 1 or 2 of these nutritional products permanently. And most are going to want to be retested by you at least once a year, I would think.
And then with regards to the Greens First products that you mentioned earlier, do you typically recommend all 4 products and the blood test on the first visit, or how does that usually work?
No, I don't. I mean, for sure, hey, they're going to need the blood test on the first visit. The sooner the better. I mean, what are we waiting on when we know how important this is? And they need really 2 of the 4 products right away. They need the polyphenols, which is the Greens First Pro, and they need the omega-3s, which is the omega-3 First Pro. Now, why? Because there are baseline levels established for both of those that every patient needs to have in their bloodstream, even if they have a normal blood test coming back. So these are the numbers they need either way, and that's exactly how I'd explain to a patient. I'm going to put you on these products. Now, again, we're going to hope that some of them can do this through diet, but you and I as a healthcare professional can't take the chance that they're going to change their diet right away now that we know that there's a problem here. So we're going to put them on supplements first, those first 2, at the dosage we want, which is just what would be the baseline normal dose, 1 scoop of Greens First Pro, 4 capsules of the omega-3 First Pro. Gives them the 2.5 grams of EPA and DHA, specifically those products, and lots of polyphenols. And since no one eats the vegetables and they don't eat the fish, we have no choice at this point. And then as soon as we get those lab results back in a few days and we schedule the appointment, then we can go to the Greens First dosage chart and we can determine if they need a little more EPA, DHA, and certainly if they need these other 2 products. If they need some omega-6s from the GLA, do they need to improve the pH in the extracellular fluid, we'll know that when we get the test back. So then we could recommend one or two of the others. So that's the way I think we should do it. It's just good to understand, Dr. Pecora. I mean, the chronic inflammation support protocol, it really is quite easy to implement if you just follow the protocol instructions that you'll be provided.
That's great. And thank you so much, Dr. Hayes, for your time. We appreciate all the really important info today. And thanks to everyone for tuning in. Do you have anything else you wanted to close with, Dr. Hayes?
No, John, I just thank you a great deal for putting these on and for Meyer and what they do. And I look forward to meeting a tremendous amount of the colleagues that I know support Meyer and whatnot. And I'm always available through Meyer some way or directly to me to answer any other questions anyone might have.
That's great. Thank you so much. And once again, thanks to everyone for tuning in. Please be on the lookout for the follow-up email within the next week or so with the Green First promos that you'll receive by attending the webinar. And if you have any questions, always feel free to contact your Meyer DC, Meyer PT, or Elevate rep for more information. And hope everyone has a great day. Thanks again.